Well, ahoy hoy, and welcome back to On the Bench, where this week we are taking a look at the Marathon General Service 39mm mechanical in steel. As ever, this is not an unboxing video. I do not like them, I do not do them, I do not intend to ever do them. This watch has been thoroughly worn and tested by myself, but simply reboxed for the purposes of the video. If you do enjoy the video, please do consider liking, subscribing, getting involved in the comments. It all does help the channel, and I very much appreciate your help. If you are familiar with Marathon boxes, it's very much the same as the GSR arrives in, much more diminutive packaging, which is fine. It's a very small watch, so a very small box absolutely makes sense. Inside the outer packaging, we have a ribbed cardboard box. Inside that, a little bit of case candy, and underneath, the watch. So, running through the features of the 39mm steel, we have as follows. The face is very reminiscent of the GSR, if you're familiar with that watch, or the standard 34mm general service, which this has been scaled up from. Around the edges, we have tritium illuminated lighting. They're T25 tubes. For those of you who are not familiar with tritium, the 25 doesn't relate to the size. You could have larger 25 batons than this. It relates to the amount of millicuries per hour, or how bright they are in terms of the radiation that they're kicking out. It is a radiation powered watch in terms of its illumination. It's a perfectly safe dose compared to like the old radium watches that you used to have. Benefit of this over lume, standard lume, is the fact that it will glow all night without fading. The tubes have a stated shelf life of about 25 years. So far I've not found that. Being perfectly honest, I found 15, 17 at the most on the other ones I've had, and they're starting to die out. But on paper, you've got 25 years before you would need to think about refacing and rehanding this watch. The tritium on most of the watch is a very pleasant green colour, with the exception of the number 12, which is orange, which makes it easy to index at night. If you've not got it on, you've got it on the bedside, you can easily see where the 12 o'clock number is. The hands, as you can see, are also tritium lumed, one lozenge at the end of the second hand. It is the same colour as the rest, but it's distinctly smaller, so you can identify it as the second. And on top of this, we have a perfectly flat sapphire crystal. There's one layer of AR coating on this watch, which is underneath the sapphire crystal, which makes perfect sense. If you had AR on the top as well on a field watch, it's just going to get scratched, and this does a very good job. Powering the watch, we have a full ETA movement, the ETA 2801, which is nice to see because it is a Swiss brand, or Swiss manufactured brand. They have access to ETA movements. You may or may not know this, but ETA now only supply Swiss makers. You can't get the ETAs if you are manufacturing abroad. You can get the Solita, fine, but if you want a full ETA, you've got to be Swiss based. Now, that ETA is housed in a standard 316L steel case, which has been satinized, which is very nice. It's not brushed, it's a very, very smooth satin finish on the outside, so you don't have reflection, you don't have glare. Exactly what you want on a field watch. The crown is a simple one position to pull out and set the time. There's no date complication on it. When it's inserted, it's a pressure seal with a gasket behind it. You can feel a little bit of pullback when you go to move the crown. Yep, you probably just about see that on the video where it's snapping back into place. That's the rubber gasket on the inside that's providing the waterproofing for the watch. It also winds in this position. How many winds? I've been asked that a few times, and it really does depend on the size of your thumb and finger. If you think about it, my travel of a turn is going to be different to somebody else's because they've got different size finger and thumb to me. I find about 25 to 30 winds of this, and it's fully charged. You can feel when it's getting fully charged because you'll start getting resistance to the turning. As soon as you're getting resistance, that's good enough to stop. And we've got a power reserve of about 36 hours in the ETA 2801, which is more than enough to see you overnight. You just give this a wind again in the morning and you're good to go. Around the back, under the strap, we have Marathon's usual litany of information that's on there. Why is there all this on there? Because they're a military contractor as their primary source of income. They claim about 90% of their watches are sent directly to military contractors, so military armed forces around the world, particularly North America. All this is on there because that's what they want on there. The water resistance rating on the watch is 30 meters. And some people might say, well, that's not a lot. Well, by diving standards, no, but you've got to remember this is a field watch. This is designed for getting wet, crossing rivers, that kind of thing. It's not designed for diving. So 30 meters is actually the military spec. What they want a field watch to do is 30 meters resistance. So it's fine for swimming. It's fine for getting general day-to-day wetness on it. That's fine. Snorkeling, not so much. If you're planning on doing that on a holiday, you maybe want to take another one on a proper diver as well as this. But for general day-to-day wear in the field, I've had this literally out in the field with me for the last few weeks, it's absolutely fine. Now, as I said a few moments ago, the case is 39mm. It's a bit of a funny size, to be honest, with the case dimensions on it. It's about a 39, scaled up from the 34mm. It has a lug-to-lug of 44.25mm, which makes it eminently wearable. It's still quite a dinky watch, even at 39. The strap is a 16mm. It's available at no-cost options in either nylon or ballistic nylon. This is ballistic nylon. If you're wondering what the difference is, ballistic nylon, yes, it's tougher, but it's also got a much thicker weave. If you can see there, you've got distinct ridges going across it. That's the difference. It's a much tougher, coarser weave than standard nylon, therefore making it a bit more hard wearing. Now, before we go on, I think it's only fair we just discuss what is a field watch. For me, there's a couple of designs, really. Classic field watch. When someone says field watch, really, this is what springs to my mind. This style of case, this Marathon / Hamilton / CWC Cabot Watch Company, all riffs on a theme of post-Vietnam style field watch. They look very much the same. We've got a chunky case, we've got a very clear screen, it's very no-nonsense. This is the design which comes to mind for me when someone says a field watch. There is also a very distinctive World War II style, generally known as Dirty Dozen, not after the film. 12 companies were contracted by the Allies in World War II to make watches for them. They are known as the Dirty Dozen. They all look very, very similar, but they're a distinctly different style to these. So if you've never seen one, go and have a look. And by the way, that's my upcoming tip for micro brands for the next 12 months or so. I think they're very much going to move into the Dirty Dozen watches. I've seen 1 or 2 already. I know 1 or 2 are in the works with some companies. So you're going to have more field watch options shortly from micro brands, and they're going to be interesting to see. So I'll get my hands on as many of those as I can, and we'll maybe do a comparative review, or just a review if I only manage to get my hands on 1 or 2. So what do I like about the Marathon? Well, this is my go-to #1 classic field watch. I've owned several. This is now my go-to because I like the whole package that the Marathon General Service gives me. What I mean by that, first of all, there's the tritium. It's a deal breaker for me, really, on a field watch. I want and need, for what I do for a living, all-night visibility. Yes, there are some very good looms out there, and ones that are much brighter than T25 after you've held them underneath the lamp for 25 minutes. Yes, they're a lot brighter, but they fade, and after a few hours, you can barely see them. There's probably people hopping up and down on at the other end of this video right now saying, "Whoa, my blah 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 has got much better blah 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 than that." For me, none of them will compare to the overnight reliability of tritium. It is never going to fade on you overnight. It's a fantastic source for lighting a watch, and I want this on my field watch. Next is the size. It's small enough to be inobtrusive, large enough to be legible at 39. Unfortunately, I can't find what I've done with my micro scales, but it's got a weight to it, this thing, with a solid steel case, and it is quite a large case comparative to the size of the watch. It's comfortable to wear. It looks fantastic as well. Once again, it's an aggressively, competently styled watch for Marathon. This is the grey man at the back of the room. No frills, no fuss. You just know it knows what it's doing. I like the fact as well that it's manual wind. It is available for cheaper in a quartz movement, but this is the manual hand wind one. This gives it great reliability. You're not going to have the battery going flat in a foreign country in the middle of nowhere and having to chase down the battery, but also a plug, another reseal to go over the back once you've taken it off, change the battery, otherwise you're going to lose the waterproofing. Not impossible, and most places you'll be with one of these things on. You should be able to find a battery, but for me, the hand winding on it makes it incredibly reliable. It's old tech, yes, it's quaint. Oh dear, you've got to wind it every morning. Well, if you're too lazy to be bothered winding a watch in the morning, well, that's on you. But I really like that feature in this watch. I also like the fact that the Marathon uses a completely flat crystal on the top of their field watch. There's no doming to this. Field watches are meant to be worn in the field. It's going to get knocked about. It's going to come across scratching stuff. It's just a safety feature on it, which makes it much more difficult to scratch or damage the glass. And again, it adds to that whole package of what I'm looking for. We have the drilled lugs as well. Makes changing the straps a breeze-ish. And we're going to come to that one in a minute. But overall, it's a fantastic package. It's a great looking watch and I really enjoy it. However, do I like everything about this watch? No, quite frankly, even though it's my number one. Before, again, people start hopping up and down and getting mad that I'm destroying their brand. There are some things I don't like about it. And the first thing, it's the elephant in the room. It's the strap. Now, when they've scaled this up from the 34mm, they've increased the case size to 39, and they've left this super skinny 16mm strap on it. Why would you do that? And I actually asked them that. I emailed Marathon and said, look, is this just your thing again? Because Marathon's thing, in inverted commas, is skinny straps, in my mind anyway. They always seem to have at least one strap size down from what you'd expect for the case size with Marathon watches. But this is a whole nother level. A 16mm strap on a 39 watch. It is tiny. And they said, yeah, it is our thing again. I was wondering perhaps whether it was a military contract thing, whether they'd said, look, when you're designing this, we want a super skinny strap on it for whatever reason. But no, it's just them being Marathon. And they said if it was larger, it would throw the watch off, it'd look odd. Well, I've got 36s with 18 and 20mm straps on them, and they look fine. To me, it's just too thin. It doesn't sit as well on the wrist as other Marathons have done in the past that I've owned and ones that I own at the moment. Because it's so thin, it tends to pitch up a little bit with the angle of your wrist because there's not the width of strap there to hold it down and in place. Once again, we have a Marathon which looks like a weightlifter that skipped leg day. But what can you do? You know, it's their design. Unfortunately, it has another kick-on effect, which is aftermarket straps. Now, this is a little bit shiny for me as a strap. It's also not the style of NATO that I would like, as you can see from the rather large weave at the end here, which you tuck it into. I'd rather have a normal NATO. And the world of 16mm watch straps isn't exactly rammed when it comes to military style straps. Now, I appreciate this, it can be worn as unisex, absolutely. But in terms of their marketing, in terms of who's going to be wearing this, it's generally a man's watch. It's a man's military or contractor operator field watch. And you're trying to shop for a 16mm strap to change this. You've not got many options. You've got a load of options in ladies' watches. You know, you could get a great pink leather thing for this thing, but 16mm is very difficult to get, and this would look great on a bun strap as well, but a 39mm wrist pad with a 16mm strap, no chance. You are not going to find that combination. You're going to have to order that as a custom order, and that's going to make this watch very expensive. Which brings us to the next point of things I could have a slight moan about, and that's the price. Once again, I appreciate price is subjective, and you can charge what you want. Marathon are a little bit different from your general watch brands though, because they're not trying to compete. They sell 90% direct to the military. So they're not in high street shops generally. I know of only one in the UK, one shop, where I could walk in and have a look at one of these and probably pick one up while I was there. One shop in an entire nation or United Nation. Yes, you can get them online, but in terms of high streets, no. So they're not really trying to compete with the likes of Hamilton, who probably is the direct competitor if you were going to think of a watch which is like this, which you could easily get hold of, go and try on, etc. It'd probably be the Hamilton. And you've got to look at the price in that point. Because from the consumer's end, while you wouldn't get a Hamilton with tritium, you can get a watch which on paper has much higher power reserve, and I say on paper. Or if you went to Cabot, you could get a watch with 200 meters water resistance. I suppose it depends what's important to you about what a field watch does. Not just how it looks, but what does it do? Where's your money going in that watch? But you've got to bear in mind that for nearly a third less money than this, at 700-ish UK, and probably comparable dollar price in the USA, you can get a Hamilton for about a third less money, nearly a third. And that's got to be a big consideration when you're looking at one of these. And I think it's a bit sad. It does depend what your business model is. Are you trying to sell lots of units for a lower price, or a few units for a higher price? Or you can pitch somewhere in the middle. Where a Marathon pitch? Well, I don't know. I don't work for them, but I know that it is expensive for what it is, in my opinion. Yes, you get the full ETA movement, which is lovely. One thing with the Hamiltons, with the extended power reserve, is reliability concerns. And I'm not just making that up. I've had two in the last 2 years, extended power reserve Hamilton field watches. Why have I had two? First one stopped working within a week of me having it. As well as dialing down the beats per minute, which is what they say allows them to have a higher power reserve, they've also changed out some parts. And those parts, allegedly, aren't quite as good as the ones that they've taken out. So there are some reliability concerns with those. So yeah, you've got to look at what you want. But for me, would I preferred a bit cheaper? Yes, honestly. And before we go to wrap up, I will add one small thing as well. Now, this might sound very strange, but if you've ever had anything to do with the military, this might click or resonate with you. In that there are a couple of places in the world where I would be careful about wearing this, or wearing a watch similar to it. This is one with US government markings on it. You can have as a no-cost option, no government markings. Another thing I like about Marathon is the fact that you do have these no-cost options that you can select on ordering. Be careful if you're going to have one of these in your wrists, certain parts of the globe, because this watch very much marks you out as potentially armed forces, potentially security forces, or X, when you might not be. So just bear it in mind. If you're going to somewhere in the world that's a little bit fractious, that somewhere has a little bit of a problem with the North Americans, you might be wanting to go for a Casio rather than one of these. Just bear that in mind. So having said all that, what do I think of it? I really like it. I do. It's still my #1 go-to field watch, irrespective of the skinny strap. God, I wish it was wider. I wish it was a little less expensive than it is. But it does everything that I want it to do in ways that other watches don't, for me. But what matters is what you want from a field watch. And I'd love you to let me know. Please do get involved in the comments. What do you think of the Marathon? Do you have one? Do you enjoy it as well? Do you have a Cabot? Do you have a Hamilton? Why did you pick that rather than one of these? Have you seen one of these before, these 39mm ones? Because they're not exactly everyday watches that you find on people's wrists. Please do let me know in the comments. I'm always interested in what you have to say. I do try and reply to people, everybody who leaves a comment, but it is time dependent, so please don't be offended if I don't or I miss it. As ever, I've been your host, Jim. I will see you again shortly with some fantastic watches that we have coming up. Until then, please do take care.